So good morning, Gay. How are you
Good
doing
morning,
today?
dear. Doing just fine.
Good. Um, it's I've been following the heat pump pilot for some time now, and just been really impressed with the innovative spirit behind it, and the focus on equity in this area. And so I've really been looking forward to having you come talk with us about the work that you're doing in this area. So if you want to put your slide deck up.
Yeah, I will. But first, I wanted to say great to see all of you again. It's I see we have the usual suspects rounded up for TICP. But I want to introduce my colleague, Melina Bimpong, is here with me today. And she'll be presenting along with me on the parts that she's doing. She's been our tenant engagement coordinator on this project since last June. She just graduated from Cornell last spring and is heading off to the Sanford School at Duke for her master's in a couple more months. So I'm pleased to have her with us. All right, I'm going to do a share screen. Is that good?
That's great. And I'll just want to remind everybody else and myself to put yourself on mute so that we minimize the background noise. And it's great to have you here too this morning, Melina. So looking forward to this discussion.
All right, great. Let me find where the arrow bar is. All right, why is it saying doesn't want to do the arrow bar? Let's try this. Okay, that one works. Well, I think a lot of you are pretty familiar with our work that on clean energy and inequality. We've been trying to finding a systems approach to deal with those two major problems. I think most of you are familiar with our Finger Lakes Climate Fund, which at this point we've helped 86 families across 12 counties of upstate New York make energy efficiency improvements with over 145,000 in carbon offset grants. But back in 2019, I served on the Heat Smart Tompkins board, so very aware of the work that we were doing, promoting heat pumps. We were asked to apply for a $250,000 grant from NYSERDA to add an extra subsidy for heat pumps along with our carbon offset grants to low-income families in Tompkins County. And it was, I think, our success at implementing that program, maybe a little faster than some of the other groups across the state, that led to my being invited to submit a concept paper and then a proposal to NYSERDA's Innovative Market Strategies program to continue our work. And I decided to focus on rentals because Ithaca is a city of rentals with all the students that we have here. And B, housing costs are already crazy here. So home energy cost burdens just make that worse. And C, I was very aware of the barriers of getting landlords to invest in energy efficiency, especially with the recent years, before the Ukraine war, of historically low gas prices. So we ended up winning a 2-year grant, and I will have $585,000 to give away in extra subsidies for heat pumps, with a goal of converting 100 rental units for low-income people in the city and the town of Ithaca. See here. So we've got several objectives with this pilot project, and I want to emphasize the word pilot because we're trying to learn from it. First, we're focused on 1 to 4 unit rental buildings. This is the typical older house that's been cut up into apartments. We have a lot of those in Ithaca, but I was really surprised when I did the research to find out that that category, 1 to 4 unit buildings with low income tenants in them, is 24% of all the low income housing in New York State. Yet it has received the least amount of NYSERDA money for energy upgrades. So it's been neglected because of the barriers to working there. So we're going to be wanting to see if we can identify and overcome those barriers so that we can get some insight into helping this large sector transition to clean energy. And since it's a pilot, we're going to be documenting whatever we can on the both quantitative energy performance data and qualitative human behavior and comfort data as we go along. I wanted to spend a few minutes on the split incentive in case some of you aren't really familiar with that topic. It is known as this long-standing problem in the energy efficiency arena of trying to get landlords to invest in energy efficiency. When a homeowner decides to upgrade and invest in insulation or efficient equipment, they're the immediate beneficiary of that choice. So they can run the numbers and see if the investment is worth the results. But when it comes to rentals, the tenants, either directly or indirectly, are paying for the utility bills. Either they're getting the utility bill or it's included in the rent. And I've been to some local landlord roundtables in which there's a perception that, given the high number of students in our community who are tenants, that they see this energy profligacy of, the doors and windows are open and the lights are never turned off. So why bother to make efficiency investments? Look at that behavior. So we're trying to address that idea that it's not worth it. And from the tenant's perspective, when you're in a really tight rental market like Ithaca, you don't really just get to shop around if you're energy conscious and find, apartments that are more efficient and you can look at the utility data, et cetera. You're just lucky to find a place to live. So there's not much bargaining power around getting landlords to decide to invest in energy efficiency because it sells on the market. That's a major reason for why there's such low investments in efficiency in rental units. So this is all about heat pumps, and I don't think I need to tell all of you about the benefits of heat pumps, but obviously we're pushing for electrification because they're so efficient and because they allow us to get off of fossil fuels and power them with renewable electricity, and bring along side benefits of greater comfort, better indoor air quality. And of course, it's part of our local economy to be able to use our local installers to do this work. So it's a job generator as well. And I'm really pleased that NYSERDA has gotten a lot more rigorous lately about requiring that the thermal envelope be tightened up first before they're going to help pay for any heat pump installations. There's been a lot of oversizing of heat pump systems in the last year or so. We've got a lot of clean heat installers, HVAC people who used to do fossil fuel furnaces and boilers, learned how to do heat pumps, but they don't have a branch of their business that handles insulation and air sealing. We have very few insulation companies, but we are requiring our participating installers in this pilot that either they do the installation work in-house or they have an installation partner. They're going to have to verify the existing envelope conditions and bring it up to these minimum comfort home standards, R30 roof, R14 walls and floor, a minimized draftiness in terms of ACH's air changes per hour has to be no greater than 7. And then after that, then you get to right size your heat pumps. We have several criteria for the people participating in our pilot. It has to be, the rental unit has to be either in the city of Ithaca or the town of Ithaca. And it has to be a 1 to 4 unit building. We're trying to tackle that difficult problem of getting people off of natural gas, fossil gas. So it has to be about changing out the heating system. And at least half of the rental units, let's say it's a quadplex, well, at least 2 out of those 4 rentals have to have people who meet the low to moderate income cutoffs, which are in this table here, based on household size. And as I mentioned, the insulation has to be brought up to the comfort home standard. And one last point, I am decided to limit the landlords in the pilot to only not more than 5 rental units. So we'll have, at least 20 landlords involved, probably more. One of our goals here is to spread the word, get people used to the benefits of converting to heat pumps, help overcome some of the misinformation that's deliberately being spread out there about heat pumps, and have the community be a little more familiar and open to the idea of electrification. So what we're doing with this pilot is we're just adding to the stack of incentives that's out there, trying to sweeten the pot, have a fat enough bunch of carrots to offer to landlords for them to take the step and go ahead with this envelope work and the switching over to heat pumps. So with low income folks already will qualify through NYSERDA, their Empower Plus program, for $5,000 to $10,000 for the envelope work for the first rental unit in a building, and then an extra $2,500 to $5,000 for each unit in the building. So that's quite generous. You can do a lot of insulation air sealing for $17,000, for example. And then for the air source heat pump, besides the NYSEG rebates that everybody gets on a heat pump, we're offering $5,000 for the first 2 tons of heat pump capacity, then only $500 per ton after that. It's designed that way because I was trying to counteract that tendency to oversize the heat pumps. The NYSEG rebates are based on every 10,000 of BTUs being displaced with the heat pump, there's $1,000 to $1,400. So it encourages larger systems. So I'm trying to upfront give you $5,000 for the first 2, and maybe you only need 2 tons. So I'm hoping that inspires proper sizing. And the reason that is an issue is because we're struggling enough as it is to figure out how we're going to get the grid capacity to electrify and to support heat pumps in every building and electric vehicles. So we can't afford to waste grid capacity on houses with large heat pumps because they didn't bother to insulate, for example. Trying to find a way to push back against that tendency. Since a lot of electrification projects require moving from 100 amp service to 200 amp service, and that can get expensive to upgrade your electric panel. We're also offering $2,000 for an electric panel upgrade. We've only got enough to do 50 out of the 100 to help pay for that. And we also are offering up to 50 heat pump water heater subsidies of just $500. But all of that, I'm going to give you an example now. I'm hoping our group that wants to do a little bit of a deep dive into how do the numbers add up. So here's an example. And I want to emphasize it's just an example because the diversity we're running into in this pilot is just huge. So internally, working with our partners to deal with all these different permutations. But here's an example of a duplex, which is the most common of the 1 to 4 unit building in the city of Ithaca. So we'll go with a duplex. And in this example, it's a gas furnace and hot water system that's shared between 2 1-bedroom apartments. So what does it cost to do the envelope work and convert over to heat pump systems? Making up some of these numbers, but I'm just saying, okay, let's say the building needed $15,000 worth of envelope work. A 4-ton ducted air source heat pump might cost $26,000 to replace that gas furnace. We'll probably go to 2 50-gallon heat pump water heaters because they're slower to recover. You need to be concerned about the capacity and the demand if there's too many people drawing on it at once. So that would probably be what we need to do. And an electric panel upgrade as well. So that's an intimidating, total of over $54,000 that a landlord would be looking at for a duplex. But the subsidies from our program are they get $10,000, $5,000 each for the 2 apartments for the heat pumps. We could kick in $1,000 on the heat pump water heaters, $2,000 on the electric panel. And then the NYSEG rebates, because they're going to be pulling out that gas furnace and dismantling the fossil fuel system, they'll get the largest amount of subsidy for the BTUs, for the 48,000 BTUs in that system of almost $7,000 from NYSEG. NYSEG also offers $700 for every heat pump water heater. So they'll get a little over 8,000. And then Empower, they'll qualify for $17,500 from Empower, which can be put towards the installation and air sealing, and the leftover can go towards those water heaters. So now we're down to, a little over $15,000 for the net cost. Landlord share being around 29% of the total cost. So the public has carried almost, over 70% of the price of all this. But I'm trying to target landlords who are looking at replacement costs for their heating systems. There's a lot of boilers that are 40 and 50 years old in Ithaca, so things are aging out, and they have to look at those replacement costs. So if you're replacing that gas furnace and tank water heater in the basement, it might cost you $9,000. So now the heat pump switch out is, $6,600 more than replacing things. But natural gas fuel savings are modest compared to other fuel conversions. That's still probably close to $9,000 over the 18 years of the heat pump's lifespan. So, end result is you've saved money by making this transition. But it's so important to also notice, the added benefits. The tenants that are living there are now much more comfortable. They've got summer air conditioning, which is becoming more and more important for people's health, and better indoor air quality. We're not burning anything, no combustion going on inside the house. So that's just every house will be different, but I just thought I'd walk you through how do these incentives knock down the cost. So anybody recognize the landlord in this picture? Our friend Ian Shapiro, with our clean energy intern Adriana, throwing away the gas meter after he's pulled the gas furnaces out of his rental there on Cascadilla Street. But for this pilot, we are asking a lot of the landlords, but we're giving them a lot as well. The big requirement is that they can't raise the rent for 2 years from the date of the installation of the heat pump. The reason they're getting all of these extra funds is because their tenants are lower income. So we want to make sure that those tenants, they're the beneficiaries of this investment. They're the ones with the more comfortable home, better indoor air quality, summer air conditioning. And we don't want the cost of their housing to go up as a result. None of the costs of the transition can be pushed over onto the tenants. We are, the other proviso is that in many cases, you'll see the landlord paying for the rent because it's a big boiler or a furnace in the basement, but all the tenants will have their own electric meters. So they have been paying for their own apartments, appliances and lighting. Well, now the heating is going to be moved over onto the electric meters. And so when that happens, the landlord has to reduce their rent by an equivalent amount of what the heating cost was previously on gas. And I ran some numbers, and so it might be pretty typical that you might see your rent going down $80–90 a month as the heating came over onto your bill, and instead of being included in the rent. We are very focused on getting as much data as we can out of this. And so we're asking the landlords, either the landlord or the tenant, to sign a utility release form so that we can get data from NYSEG of the previous 12 months, and then follow for 12 months after putting in the heat pump. So we can have a lot of data to look at performance over multiple seasons. And we also are, we want to capture the landlord stories and share them with the community. So we have them sign a media release and agree to do an interview after the work is done to talk about the pilot, the process, interactions with the installers, and just how did the whole thing go. So I'm now going to turn over to Melina, who's going to tell you about what's required of the tenants and what she is doing with the tenants as part of this pilot.
Hi, everyone. So for the next several slides, I'm just going to be talking more about the tenant experience and what they will be doing as a part of the pilot. So what is required of the tenants? So like the landlords, tenants will also be required to sign a utility release form. And this form will give us permission to obtain their NYSEG electric and gas data. And tenants will also participate in a short video interview in which they will share their story about the energy improvements. So this is why they'll also need to sign the media release form. And for the video interview, to ensure that the tenant is comfortable with the interview being made public. So for example, like on our website or on our social media, we are very happy to record multiple takes if needed. And this will be outlined in the media release form. And I will go into and the last two bullets, the last three bullets, the home energy survey, both before and after, and the home energy workshop, in which you'll get the chance to receive a dozen LED light bulbs. I will go into more detail about the surveys and the workshop in the next couple of slides. So for the pre-installation and post-installation surveys, since this is a pilot, one major part of this project will be gathering results about where things went well and where things can improve. So one way in which we'll be collecting data about the tenant experience will be through the pre-installation and post-installation surveys. And these surveys will have questions about the bullet points listed here. So basic information such as monthly rent, gross income, household size, how many members in your household, things like that. And then electric and gas bill information. So who's paying for the utility bills, the POD numbers, information along those lines. And then current home comfort conditions during both warmer and cooler months. Identifying problem areas. So for example, being too hot, being too cold, poor ventilation, mold. Those are just a few, but there's many more. And to summarize your current energy behaviors. So a few include using plug strips, LED lighting, drawing blinds, or turning off unused lights. And then for the post-installation survey, this will be, the post survey will be about 1 to 4 months after installation. And the goal of the post survey will be to evaluate the effectiveness of the energy upgrades and to report their impact on improving home comfort. We can do the next slide. And then for the home energy workshops, so one requirement of tenants will be to participate in a home energy workshop that I will be hosting. This will be over Zoom and it will be about 45 minutes long. So we'll be discussing ways to save energy as we cover the topics listed on the slide. So important topics to cover will include phantom and plug load, reading the NYSEG bill, buying Energy Star appliances, LED lighting, storm windows, weather stripping, and best practices for heat pumps.
And one of the reasons we put this energy education workshop into our pilot is so that we have sort of a rebuttal to landlords who feel like the tenants are clueless about energy. Well, we're making sure they know a lot more about home energy and how to, many tenants have their own electric bills. What can they do to reduce their electric bill? That we hope will help people move in a direction of landlords and tenants working together to reduce carbon footprints and not be oppositional. I think a really exciting aspect of our pilot is our partnership with Performance Systems Development. They're a local energy software company that's been modeling energy performance for decades now. The principal, Greg Thomas, and our friend Ian Shapiro from Tatum, they worked together 30 years ago, maybe, when they were both in Syracuse working for Carrier, and developed the first treat software for energy modeling that NYSERDA used for a long time, that installers had to use in terms of modeling the impact of various, energy improvement steps that were going to be done on somebody's house. But now they have this very sophisticated Compass platform they've been building that's funded by NYSERDA and the Department of Energy. And our pilot is going to be a special case on this new platform. I think it'll be the first sort of 1 to 4 unit rental use of the system. And so basically we're going to be uploading all the building data, the project data, the occupant data into Compass, along with photos and the installer findings and recommendations. So it's all there associated with one project. And as we mentioned earlier, we're going to be trying to get the previous year's utility data from whoever has owned the meters in a unit, and then follow it for another year with NYSEG data. But 50 out of the 100 rental units that we're hoping to do, we're going to install these Emporia devices there. Here's an image of one. That one's a 16 channel one. Ours will be 8 channel. They're real-time energy monitors that you install on the electric panel, and you can then tag the specific electrical consumption of the heat pump and separate that out from the rest of the load in the house. So it'll really be, and then you can look at your smartphone app to see, how's my heat pump performing. And the Compass platform will allow PSD to detect performance problems where if there's a gap between the model performance and what's actually happening, we can take a look to see if it is maybe the tenant wasn't paying attention when Melina talked to them about how, heat pumps and thermostats, how you don't move the thermostat wildly around. And that could cause an excess use of energy. But it also would let us pinpoint something that, hey, the installer needs to come back and take a look because something's not working right. So it's good real-time feedback. Don't have to wait for a high energy bill to find out something's wrong. And then, of course, we're, NYSEG has been extremely interested in this pilot. There's so many people looking over our shoulders. Kind of been surprising how many are involved, but I think it's because we're going to be able to do a very integrative report at the end, that takes into account the qualitative survey data that Melina's collecting, as along with all this quantitative data that we'll have on the energy consumption. It's been a lot of work to get this thing geared up, and there's a lot more yet to do. But I've interviewed about a dozen landlords so far. We have 4 enrolled. The others are trying to figure out which of their units best fit. So we're moving along, and Melina's very busy out there doing tabling and talking to groups, and we're trying to reach tenants as well with this message so that they can talk to their landlord and tune them in. And I'll be continuing to do my outreach to landlords. So we're just getting going, really, but I'm in maybe 6 months or so, we might have something to share with you in terms of starting to have some results come in. So I thought I'd just wrap up today with a few slides about our other low-income heat pump project, which is with mobile homes. More than a year ago, I guess it was in 2021, Martha Robertson and Annie Corman approached me because they knew this federal money from COVID relief fund was going to be coming along, and they thought it'd be a good idea to use some of it to help low-income people get on heat pumps, because we've been doing this with the Heat Smart money. And so we presented to the peak committee at the county, but then it was a whole year before the Community Recovery Fund actually came into being and we could apply for it last fall. I had been thinking of, applying to just do any old low-income home, for heat pumps, but by last fall, there was a conversation evolving around mobile homes. Chuck Geisler had written this really great white paper on mobile homes in Dryden, but also kind of a national perspective on all of it. And Randy Brown on the county legislature is also, there's a lot of mobile home parks out in his Newfield, Enfield area. So a conversation was evolving around mobile homes, and in fact, a task force has been formed with members from the CASE board, the Clean and Sustainable Energy Board, and ourselves and some folks from Cornell. And so I decided to write this to just focus on mobile homes. They are a special case. They need help. For one thing, the population tends to be low income, and more senior citizens are ending up in mobile homes, and they are vulnerable because they're sort of known to be energy hogs because of the poor quality doors and windows typical in a mobile home and thin insulation. They use a lot more energy to heat the space than a stick-built house would. So here you are, low income, you're in a mobile home, but your energy bills are worse than if you were living in town, in an apartment somewhere. Good 20% higher typically. Plus, they're known for being extremely hot in the summertime, and with a growing senior population in those homes, that creates a public health risk for us in terms of heat waves. We had wanted to do 100 mobile homes, like we were doing 100 rentals, but given the size of the fund, we scaled it back to 50. And that's, again, it's a pilot. There's over 4,000 mobile homes in Tompkins County, and more than half of them are scattered around the county. And so what we're going to be doing is collecting as much information as we can. Holly Hutchinson, our climate fund coordinator, is going to be the outreach person for this project. I'll handle the work with the owners and the installers, but she's going to be going around door to door to all of the 43 mobile home parks that are in the county, talking to people and familiarizing them with this offer. And then we'll be doing outreach through churches and neighborhood newsletters, that kind of thing out in the rural areas to try to get the word out to the, 2,300 that live scattered around the county. And like the other project, we're going to try to access utility data before and after the heat pump is installed, and we'll survey the occupants before and after in terms of their comfort issues. And we imagine that we're going to find lots of times where it doesn't work. We can't overcome the barriers, and we want to track what those barriers are so that the task force on the mobile homes can be really familiar with what are some of the issues that we encounter. This one has some of its own special requirements. First, they must own the home. I decided to not complicate things with looking at a landlord-tenant relationship in a mobile home. I'm going to try to get another 400,000 from the feds in a July grant that I'm going to submit, and we could expend, maybe have the capacity to add in that category. But for this one, they have to own their mobile home. And for this one, because it's federal money, the income levels are a little different. It's right here in this table of they have to meet 300% of federal poverty guidelines to be able to be in this pilot with us. Again, we're making them bring the envelope up to standard, and because that's really going to pay off for a mobile home. They're modest standards, compared to a house. Just R24 for the attic, R21 in the belly, our 6 walls, and note the much higher air exchange rate. It's hard to get a mobile home, super tight, given the quality of the windows and doors. But that is at least an improvement. We've done at least half a dozen mobile homes in our Finger Lakes Climate Fund over the years, and boy, they need work. I'll certainly say that. The installers will apply to NYSEG and NYSERDA and myself for all the incentives. The homeowner doesn't have to do that. But the homeowner in this case, because we passed the Inflation Reduction Act, we're trying to make sure the owner knows that they can go and get a $2,000 tax credit for that heat pump on their taxes when they file for 2023. So, and we will, as I mentioned earlier, also be having them do the utility and media waivers. Just a quick overview of, we're anticipating significant envelope work. It's probably going to be needed on a lot of these homes. Most of them are probably heating with a propane furnace, and which might be replaced with a 3-ton air source heat pump ducted system, which are a little easier, to put in and pull out the other and put the other one in. Heat pump water heaters are not a good fit for mobile homes because they need to be somewhere outside of the, not in the living space. They tend to be down in basements, so they don't really, there's no place to put them. But electric panel upgrades are quite likely. And in mobile home parks, they can be pricey and maybe out of reach because the meters and panels are not necessarily right there on the house. They can be, clustered in an area amongst several units, so that can get too pricey. But once again, they will be looking for the Empower Plus subsidies to cover that envelope work. That's, depending on their income, $5,000 to $10,000. And you can get a lot done with that on a home. The NYSEG rebate would be, again, probably at the higher rate of $1,400 per 10,000 BTUs, because they probably will be removing the entire furnace system. And then we'll be offering the same incentives as our rental pilot, where for this 3-ton system, it would be $5,500 towards the heat pump and, $2,000 for the electric panel. So a quick look at a example, that I made up based on conversations with installers and looking at work scopes. In this case, we've got $8,000 worth of installation work that had to be done. The 3-ton ducted air source heat pump, around 20,000. The electric panel upgrade, a little extra work as the wiring is a little further away, so $4,000 maybe for that. So $30,000. How's a low income person, you're gonna begin to pay for that? Well, we would through this county recovery fund grant be able to put $7,500 towards it. NYSEG, a little over $5,000. Empower could give them $10,000 towards the panel upgrade and the installation. So that gets it down to, $9,000, little over $9,000. And with a tax credit, now we're down to almost $7,500 for the cost of all this. If their propane furnace was aging out, it might cost them close to $5,000 these days to put in a propane furnace. So meanwhile, take a look at those fuel savings. Propane is so expensive compared to gas that over the 18-year lifespan of the heat pump, it's close to $20,000 in fuel savings that this person would see. So spending a few thousand more for the equipment is definitely worth it. And again, they get the added benefits of the greater comfort, cleaner indoor air quality, and summer air conditioning, which could end up being very, very important for people that are at risk. All right, how come that's not working? I think that's it. I'm glad to take your questions. As I said, we really hope to learn a lot about overcoming the barriers to helping lower income families make the transition to clean energy in these 2 pilots. I think the federal and state governments are recognizing that the public taxpayer is going to have to step in and help low income folks in this process over the long term. And I think that's why, there's a lot of interest in running pilots like this to see how do we manage it. I think we'll see improved subsidies in time, and I think we'll see some regulation, especially on rentals, some requirements. But we're just hoping that we can not only help 150 families with these 2 pilots, but that we can learn a lot, and that the state and other parties can take more broadly across the state to help this part of our population. I'll stop there.
Thanks, Gay, and thanks to Milana as well. Really appreciate you sharing those insights with us. Have you touched base with INHS about the Compass Mobile Home Park?
Yeah, we've been in several meetings with them, with Ben. Ben's part of the task force.
Yeah, okay.
There's a lot of really, and Chuck is, and Holly and myself, great conversations going on, especially I'm hoping that the county can figure out, even though they don't have land use control, how can we help prevent hedge fund investors from buying up our mobile home parks and jacking up the rents on the low income people in those parks, because they know it costs $5,000 to move a mobile home and people aren't going to be able to, they'll just have to pay the rent. So part of the conversation is also, can we get a moratorium on that? What are our options for cooperatively owned cell phone mobile home parks, or more INHS stepping in? There's federal and state programs on this, so we're exploring all that, and it's exciting to see. We're trying to learn and share and hopefully be able to do things.
Yeah, it's hard to think of a better example of predatory capitalism than hedge funds stepping in, buying up mobile home parks, and then jacking up the rent.
It's happening everywhere, and
it's so
it's happening.
disgusting.
It's happening in this county, and all over. So how can we, get organized? It's just, if we could have a moratorium somehow, that would be, that's kind of breathing space we need for figuring out, what are some steps that we can take. But people are working on it, and there's one under conversation right now, right, Chuck? That we're trying to see money can flow to municipalities and nonprofits like INHS for these mobile home projects. So we're lucky that we have the infrastructure of a very involved government and INHS, a very successful affordable housing developer with a lot of skill sets and staff.
So Terry in the comment section is wondering about the need for a 3-ton heat pump in a mobile home and whether or not that's oversized.
Well, as I said, they tend to be, inefficient spaces. So even after bringing it up to that standard, look at that air exchange rate. If that's the best they can get, they unlikely to be comfortable with a 2-ton system. I know it's so interesting. I have a 2-ton geothermal that is serving my house very comfortably, 1,400 square feet. But it is insulated and and there's a room that's cold because it doesn't have enough ducts, and oh well, that's fire up the wood stove if I'm over there. But I know that I see a lot of 3-ton systems going in, and even one was a 4-ton going into a trailer up in Yates County. That was surprising.
I think that's terrible. I mean, honestly, that's wildly oversized in all circumstances, even with it. I mean, and honestly, if the ACH is so bad that you're having to put in a wildly oversized system, then honestly, you should be looking at whether a heat pump should be going in at all before, further air sealing work happens. This is something that we see not just in mobile homes, but across the board. I see it in Tompkins County. I hear about it in other places as well. These heat pump contractors are making the same mistake that traditional conventional HVAC installers did, and they're installing these wildly oversized systems. And they're not doing heat load calculations the way they should be done, and they're still just putting in these systems according to rule of thumb or based on these eye tests or based on the previous system that was installed that was wildly oversized. So I just would really encourage everyone to think of pretty critically when they're looking at heat pumps and thinking about what should be being installed, because the number of 5-ton heat pump systems that are going into conventional buildings right now it's stunning how many are just going in, and they just see it as what should just go in, and that's just absolutely not the case. And so I really think that's something that needs to be taken a look at. And I'm glad, Gay, that, with the NYSERDA piece of it, there's going to be these Emporia, electric monitors going in, because that's going to be the telltale sign right there, whether they're oversized tonight, when you start seeing the cycling that occurs in these systems. And it's not just an issue for the initial cost of it. It hurts the efficiency as they run. It hurts the comfort as they run. They don't run as well. The bigger systems that you put in, the more refrigerant charge that you put in.
Right.
The installers.
That's exactly why NYSERDA has been spending all this money on the Comfort Home program and setting these requirements now. Finally, we've known about this oversizing problem, and the fact that, as I said earlier, a lot of HVAC firms that used to just go slap in a new furnace for you are now willing to come and slap in a heat pump for you, and they don't look at the envelope. They don't take any responsibility for reducing the heating and cooling load. So now NYSERDA is finally saying, well, don't come to us for any incentives unless you have an installation partner. And it's a process that we're in terms of getting those guys who, their heads are all about making payroll and covering their overhead. And so they don't necessarily want to take responsibility for the rest of the world. But you have to put guardrails around it and, help them learn to find that partner that they can collaborate with, or expand their business. Simply Installs did that. The Cole brothers, they now have Simply Home Performance. So now, like Halco, they can do the envelope work and put the heat pump in. And they'll have to prove what the existing conditions are on that envelope with a blower door test and measurements of the insulation, and then describe how they're going to bring it up to that comfort home standard, and then they're allowed to size. So I think that there'll be a lot of data collected and the ability to look at, what is being proposed here. At least participating in a pilot like this, there's more scrutiny compared to what is just going into NYSERDA, flowing across desks at NYSERDA, or to NYSEG, which, they have to submit a manual J to NYSEG to get the rebate. But I don't know how close the scrutiny is there either, in terms of, and again, they shouldn't have designed their incentives. Their incentives promote oversizing. But I don't know if we'll ever see that revised. But I hear you, Terry. It's definitely an issue, and we're trying to guard against it.
Is there anything that, for example, Cornell Cooperative Extension could do in terms of working with you on education?
Oh yeah, we're in fact, I think we're presenting to the Energy Navigators in May.
Yeah.
And we already had a meeting with Lee. She's not on here anymore, but Lee Miller and the Clean Energy Hub team. We met with them already, and so yes, they'll be helping us get the word out.
Great. Yeah, I
And
was
I'm
just
hoping
thinking
that some of,
that's.
oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I'm hoping that some of you, if you have friends who are landlords who own a few rental units, I hope you'll help us spread the word to them, to get in touch with me if they might be interested, and if they have rentals in the city or the town of Ithaca with low income tenants in them. I'm really hoping there'd be a lot of it has been word of mouth so far, as well as responding to the articles on us in the paper. But now I'm sort of done with that first cohort and ready to start searching out the next cohort. So I'm sorry, go ahead. What were you going to say?
I was just going to note that Jerry Wiley has a comment in chat or question asking who will be cleaning the indoor heat pump filters, the renter or the landlord?
Don't know yet. I would imagine it'll be variable, because everything about this thing has been highly variable. But it'll be, in some cases the tenant, I suppose, and some cases the maintenance people for landlords who have teams of maintenance people. Who knows? We'll see.
And then she's also wondering about HVAC maintenance, whether there'll be some kind of funding for annual or semi-annual maintenance.
Not through our pilot. That'll be up to, the landlords. However, they have been handling maintenance on their existing equipment. They will need to make a plan for, maintenance and inspection, same as you would with fossil fuel. So I think some of the landlords I've talked to, they've got 20 or 30 units. So presumably either they're doing it themselves or they've hired somebody. Others are, one of my targets is I'd like to find low-income landlords with low-income tenants, and offer also a climate fund grant to those folks to try to make the transition and help them learn how to, live with a heat pump and plan for scheduled maintenance on it. We have one landlord that they own one house. They moved out of their place in town, and now it's, a duplex. Others are large landlords with, they're making their living as a landlord. So it's good that we're getting this diversity of landlords and tenants.
Yeah. Chuck, you know something about these issues. You got a question or comment?
Well, I'll start with a comment, Gabe and Melina, thank you. The clarity of the overview is extremely helpful. Thank you for presenting both of the pilots in their short form for us today and for giving us those examples so we can actually pin down the numbers. It's extremely helpful. And I guess I also want to appreciate the way in which the two pilots combined are sharpening our awareness of affordability challenges in this very, very high rent county that we live in. So thanks. And one of the differences between the two pilots that stands out in my eyes is the way in which the energy cost burden in the mobile home sector is so significant. As we know, sometimes it even exceeds the rent of the unit. And so a question, Gabe, in both the mobile home and the non-mobile home beneficiaries, participants in your projects, what would you shoot for as a energy the cost burden? Should it be 5% under ideal circumstances, coming down from much higher than that, or some other percentage?
I think I've heard 6% as the goal, but I haven't read a lot about that. So and this is I've only, like I said, we've only seen like a half a dozen mobile homes in our climate fund project. So I'm not super familiar yet with what's the diversity that we're going to see there. And, and I know it's been worrisome to me how the prices have gone up so much, since I did the original concept paper, I feel, and did the pro formas in that proposal. Now I'm having to completely redo those pro formas because the prices of energy have changed so much since then, and the prices of the equipment and labor costs, and kind of opportunistic profit taking, has all combined to make the heat pumps so expensive. That's why I'm glad that we have 5 participating installers in the rental project, and I'm telling all the landlords to get them at least 2 bids. So that you can shop around a little bit. We need competition and we need more workforce in this arena. You all know that. And especially we need to find a way to encourage more people that life's fun as an insulation and air sealing technician. It's hard work. So it isn't, glamorous or attractive. How can we get more people willing to go and do this essential work of reducing the load in the first place? So I'm not sure where we'll end up. We're in this learning process. We're launching in April for the mobile homes, just getting started. And again, like the rental project, maybe in 6 months we'll have more that we could share once we've gotten into some actual projects and begin to see more things.
Thank you.
Knotty issues, but somebody has to take them on. So we're grateful.
I feel like
Gabe
I'm
here.
nuts for doing it, but
Yeah, burning a lot of brain cells on this one. Wonder what the greenhouse gas emissions from that.
oh man, it's been, there's so much complexity, and we're always like, wait a minute, we didn't think of that one. Oh my gosh, here's another thing that we got to figure out. How are we designing this? And as I said, the NYSERDA team is very interested. There's a lot of those folks that are, checking in on us, and we've got a whole team at Performance Systems that we're working with. But we're all excited about it, But Dave, you've got your hand up.
We, after we got a heat pump, my wife bought a CO2 monitor, indoor portable CO2 monitor. It's an awesome little thing. And it showed that we had a serious indoor air pollution problem just because we have a sealed house. So the cure for that is to buy an air-to-air heat exchanger, which is quite an adventure in itself, because if you think heat pump prices are jacked up, you should see these things.
Yeah, I have one in my basement for the radon.
Well, that's different because that basically just pulls out radon constantly. It doesn't necessarily exchange air.
It does because of the pressure difference. Otherwise, we just have more radon.
And anyway, we noticed that without the gas stove in the house or gas heater in the house pulling or burning used air and pulling in new air, in effect, CO2 concentrations in the house could get, almost 2,000 parts per million. So, a normal is these days is 420 parts per million. So it's an issue. It's got solutions. But the problem is it just takes money.
Yeah.
And but that's another thing you need to do when you seal up a house or seal up a mobile home or an apartment. There has to be some provision of getting fresh air in, and it only makes sense to try and recover as much of the heat in the exiting air by using that to preheat the air coming in. And they can usually be about 80% efficient, and it's basically just the cost of living with a heat pump.
Yeah. Although I think a lot of houses aren't as tight as yours. I mean, those standards, those minimum comfort home standards, those air exchange rates are still, considerable in terms of not having it get too dicey.
Yeah, so we've basically run out of time, but I did want to remind people that we're in a really critical phase in Albany in terms of climate and clean energy legislation. It looks like the budget is going to be late this year, not too surprising, but there's some really critical bills in both the General Assembly and the Senate. The Senate's done a much better job of getting those bills into their one house budget than the General Assembly, for sure. But I just think people need to know that this is the next couple of weeks is really important to stay focused on what's going on in Albany. One of the best ways to get involved in the various advocacy efforts is to simply go take a look at Renewable Heat Now, their website, and sign up for their bulletins. Lisa Marshall with New Yorkers for Clean Energy is one of the leads on this campaign at the state level. I know I've been very busy every day, either tweeting or writing letters or making phone calls. But I want to underscore for folks just how important this is, because this is how we're going to put the meat on the bones of the state's climate plan. And this legislation that's in process now is really going to be key to the success of that plan and our ability to meet the very ambitious targets that are stipulated in the 2019 CLCPA. So please stay tuned to that. And as I said, if you're not already, you sign up for updates and actions from Renewable Heat Now, and also New York Renews. I should mention that too. They've been very involved. And just so people know, TICB is an active member of each of these two coalitions in terms of advocacy. So I hope you'll all, when you get off now, take a look at either of those two websites or both and get involved. So with that, we have run out of time. I did, before we go, wanted to congratulate Nick Goldsmith. You may see he's got a new tag on his name. He's moved from being the town of Ithaca sustainability coordinator to being the program officer at Park Foundation for the local sustainability program. So that's a big move for Nick, and I think a good move for the rest of us.
Thanks, Peter.
Absolutely. And he's pretty excited about it as far as I can tell. So that's a great transition, Nick, and good luck going forward with that. So with that, I'm going to say goodbye to everybody. Take care. Enjoy the weekend. Watch out for the thunderstorm coming tomorrow. Could be some severe weather associated with that. So keep your heads down and stay safe. And until the next time, we'll see you. Bye for now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Thanks, Molly.